Hello and welcome to the 8.1 notes, the intro into Trig. So today your learning target is just I can identify and set up trig ratios. We are doing trigonometry today, but don't let that word scare you because it's not too bad. So I would suggest that you find some highlighters to use that would be helpful. I'm going to use them as I go through the notes, so if you want to stop the video and find some, that would be good. All right, we're going to start off. It says in trig, we always use one of the acute angles of a right triangle as our reference point. Okay. So I'm going to circle my reference point also, always. So for example, it says right here, in reference to B, name the opposite leg, the adjacent leg, and the hypotenuse. So we can do that. And then what I will do is each one of these I'm going to have as a different color. My opposite, my adjacent, and my hypotenuse. So how do we go about that? So we're going to start with our opposite leg. Well, actually, we're going to start with our hypotenuse. And remember, with special right triangles, you'd always have to identify the hypotenuse. And to do that, you want to go across from the right angle. So wherever your right angle is, across from it is going to be your hypotenuse. Okay, so it says if we are identifying the hypotenuse and we say it's right here, we look at this line and it goes from B to A. So that is what that side is. So it is segment BA. And that's how you write that. And then, and just so you know, this can also be called AB. So those can be either way. They can be flip-flopped. All right, now moving to another color, I'm going to do purple. So we'll do the opposite leg. And we want to think of what side is going to be opposite of B. So remember back when we did special rights last week, wasn't that long ago, we would look at an angle and look across the triangle. So on the other side of the triangle, that's always going to be our opposite side, on the opposite side of the triangle. So I'm actually going to highlight these sides. I'll go back with my green and highlight it as well. So now I have the opposite with my purple is going to be CA or AC. And then last but not least, my adjacent side. So adjacent, if you think about it, I randomly hear that word sometimes, and it means next to. So if something is adjacent to something, it is next to it. So angle B is right here, and we've got to look at the two lines that are touching it. It's the hypotenuse, which we've already identified that, so it can't be that. And then there's another one that's next to it. It's the other leg. So adjacent means next to it, so it's right there. And that is the adjacent side. And that looks kind of crazy looking, so let me make sure that you guys can see that's an A. And that is BC. That is BC is adjacent. All right. So I'm going to go through and all of my opposites I'm going to make purple. All of my adjacents I'm going to make yellow. And all of my hypotenuses, hypoteni, I'm going to make H. And then we've got, I'm about to sneeze. All right, we've got three letters right here that we need to talk about. What are they? Well, this is S, C, and T, or sine, cosine, and tangent. And you'll see these down here, tan, sine, and cos. So anytime you have sine and you're looking for the sine ratio, you're going to use those two, which we identified up here, opposite and hypotenuse, in reference to whichever angle we are using. So, for example, if I want to find tangent, which up here is the opposite and the adjacent side, if I want to find tangent, I would look for tangent of A and then opposite of A is going to be this 4. All right, so this 4 is going to be opposite. You know what? I'm going to use my highlighters in a little bit different way here. I'm going to talk about my highlighters as in A is purple and O, and we want the adjacent side, which is also going to be purple. Okay, so we've got opposite and adjacent. Okay, so I'm kind of switching gears here with these highlighters. So I circled my reference angles because it's asking for tangent of A. So I circled A in purple, and then I look across the triangle, and I get to the opposite, and I look next to my A, so it's touching my A, and it's not the hypotenuse. That means it's going to be adjacent. So my O over my A would be 4 over 3. Okay, that was confusing. I'm going to do it again. But now I'm going to do tangent of B. So I'm not going to use the hypotenuse at all. All right, not using the hypotenuse at all because up here, tangent does not use the hypotenuse. So if I have opposite over adjacent, I want to look on the other side of the triangle, and I find and then right next to B, so touching B and not the hypotenuse, is going to be the adjacent side. All right, so for the tangent of B, the opposite of the triangle is 3 over 4. So that would be our trig ratio. So if we're talking about A, it's 4 over 3. If we're talking about B, it's 3 over 4. Okay, let's do another example. So I've got my A and my B. I'm going to circle A with my green highlighter. Actually, I'm going to do this the same every single time. That would be helpful. So this one's actually going to be purple. B is going to be green. And I'll do the same thing for these down here so that we keep it consistent. All right, and then we will want to look back up in our key. So our sine opposite over hypotenuse of A. We're starting with A, and we want to figure out which one is opposite of A. So if I point from A across the triangle, I get to the opposite of A. Great. So we're going to put 4 on top. And then I want the hypotenuse of the triangle. So my hypotenuse is always going to be the one across from the right triangle. So no matter if we're using, oops, did not mean to write that. It's right, H. So no matter if we're using A or B, the H will stay the same. So 5 will be the hypotenuse. So if we're looking for the sine of A, it's going to be 4 over 5. If we want the sine of B, we're going to take our highlighter and point across, and that's going to be opposite of B. We'll put a 3 there. And then the hypotenuse is going to stay the same because it's always going to be the one across from the right triangle. So it's going to be 3 over 5, which that's kind of hard to see. So let me make sure I have that outlined so you guys can see it. 3 over 5. All right, moving right along to cosine of A. So for my cosine of A, I've got my angle here, and then we want to figure out what we're looking for. We're looking for the adjacent side and the hypotenuse side. So we want to look at angle A and figure out which one is next to it, but not the hypotenuse. All right, so it's not going to be the one across the right angle, because that one's going to be the hypotenuse. The adjacent one is going to be the one touching this angle, and then the hypotenuse is going to be the longest side slash the one from across from the right angle. So 3 over 5 would be that ratio. Next, we have cosine of B. B is right here, and next to it, it's going to be this leg. So not your hypotenuse, but the one right next to that is 4 over 5. So that is 4 over 5. It's kind of hard to tell because highlighters are hard to draw or write on. But that's how you solve for those. Okay? Remember, adjacent is next to. The opposite is on the opposite side of the triangle. All right, next page. All right, I'm going to do the same thing as I did last time. So our reference angle will never be the right angle. It's either going to be A or C. So what we want to do is identify with A or C in our different colors which one's opposite and adjacent, and then the hypotenuse will always stay the same. So I'm going to write the hypotenuse in both colors. Because our purple hypotenuse is always there. All right, so starting with C, so I'm using my green highlighter. If I go to the opposite side of the triangle, I will get to my opposite side. And then right next to C is my adjacent side. So 12 is going to be my adjacent side. All right, purple. If I go to the opposite side of the triangle, I get to 12. So for purple, or my A, it's going to be 12. For 5, for my A, so right next to, the 5 is going to be adjacent. All right, so now we have everything we need. If we're talking about A, we're looking at purple. If we're talking about C, we're looking at green. So let's do this thing. We want the sine of A, and if we've forgotten what sine is, it is opposite over hypotenuse. Great, so I'm going to look for my O, and I'm going to look for my H. So my O is 12, my H is 13. And then we're actually not going to do this column. And I'll explain that in just a little bit. And then we look and we see, can it be simplified? No, this is the most simplified version of the ratio, so we are done. Now we want cosine of A. So cosine of A is going to be the adjacent over the hypotenuse. And if you're like, how do you know that, miss? Well, cosine of A over H is our trig function. All right, that is what cosine is. It's always adjacent over hypotenuse. So adjacent to A is 5, the hypotenuse is 13. These cannot be simplified, so we're done. And then for tangent, tangent of A is always going to be whatever my opposite side is. So we're looking at A, which is purple, and my opposite is 12. My adjacent is 5. It can't be simplified, so we move on. And then you look at C. So C is 5 is opposite, which sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So, I think it would be best if I started writing what each one is. Opposite over hypotenuse is sine of C. So we start with C and we're like, okay, this is the green one. Opposite of C is 5, so that's going to go on top. And then the hypotenuse for both A and C, so the hypotenuse for this triangle is 13. And then my cosine is A over H. So I want to find the adjacent side for my green. So the adjacent side to green, or right next to my C, is 12. And then my hypotenuse is 13. And then last but not least, tangent of C is going to be the opposite. So we're looking opposite of C, we get 5. And then adjacent of C is right next to it, we get 12. Ooh, I should have written opposite over adjacent. There we go. Now it's there. All right. looking at this last example here. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take my highlighters. I'm going to circle F. And I'm going to figure out which one is the hypotenuse. Well, the hypotenuse is going to be 10 regardless because it's across from the right angle. And then the opposite side, so opposite of F is 6. And then adjacent to F, so right next to F, it touches angle F, is 8. And I should have written an A, but it didn't. There you go. There's the A. So I have my purple done. Now I'm looking for green. So for green, which is this one, and this one, the hypotenuse is still going to be h, or 10. The opposite side across the triangle is 8. And right next to D is going to be A. Alright, then I'm going to circle my F. Alright, looking at D, so D is opposite over hypotenuse, so we need to figure out opposite of D is 8. The hypotenuse is going to be 10. And then you figure out, can it be simplified? And in this case, it can. So since this one can be simplified, we need to go ahead and simplify it. So we can divide both of these by 2. This would become 4, this would become 5. So we'd end up with 4 over 5. Now it can no longer be simplified, so you're done. So just make sure you're simplifying these ratios. Okay. For D, the cosine of D, it is adjacent over hypotenuse. So we need to figure out which one's right next to D. My green next to D is 6. And then my hypotenuse is 10. And this can be simplified. Both can be divided by 2. So it can become 3 over 5. And that's my ratio. Okay, and then tangent of D is going to be the opposite over adjacent. So opposite of D is 8. Adjacent is 6. And that can be simplified. Both can be divided by 2. So you end up with 4 over 3. Alright, those are my ratios. That's sine, cosine, and tangent of D. And then sine of F is going to be opposite over hypotenuse. And just remember, guys, that the opposite over hypotenuse comes from right here. That's where we're getting that. Cosine, adjacent over hypotenuse. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. So opposite over adjacent is 6 for the opposite of F. The hypotenuse is 10. All right, where do we get that? Because the hypotenuse, no matter if we're using F or D, is going to be 10. It's the longest side. And then that simplifies to 3 over 5. All right, and then cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So which one is right next to F? If you look at F, the one that's right next to it and not the hypotenuse is going to be this 8, which we labeled as adjacent. Then the hypotenuse is 10. So we get 4 over 5. Last but not least, our tangent or opposite over adjacent. So opposite of F is 6. And then adjacent to F, so right next to F, is going to be our 8. And just remember, 8 is going to be next to it. I get it that 10 also touches it, but 10 is the hypotenuse. All right, and then this simplifies to 3 over 4. And those are our ratios. All right, we're going to skip over here and look at number 5 from the assignment. So we're going to do that real quick. I have a calculator, which if you don't have one of these calculators, that's okay. You should still be able to find these on your phone, the trig values. But to find them on the calculator, there we go. It's kind of hard to see, there's a glare. But this button right here says trig. So you type in trig, and then you find tangent, T-A-N, not the T-A-N -1, not the tangent inverse, just the T-A-N, and then 33. So you type in tangent of 33 in your calculator. You get this number right here, 0. I don't know how often this has gone blurry on you guys. Hopefully not too much. Tangent of 33 is 0.649408. Don't let that freak you out. Okay, we want to round that to the nearest 10,000th. Okay, so we're going to go 4 decimal places deep. So 0.649, and then this last number right here. Okay, how many times do I have to? There we go. 649. And then 4 is going to be that last number, but we need to look at the next number, that 0, to figure out if we round up or down. And it looks like we are just going to leave it at 4 because the 0 does not round it up. And that'll be our final answer. We'll also, let's look at number 7. So trig, and instead of 20, or instead of tan, we're going to now use cosine. So cosine of 20 equals 0.939, and then okay, 6 is the next number, but we have to look at the following number to figure out if we round the 6 up or leave it at 6. And 9 is 5 or greater. Yeah, 9 is, so we're going to round up, so that ends up being a 7. Okay, so that's how you do these 5 through 8. And then I also want us to look at number 9. So this is my reference angle that I'm going to circle, 74. And then I've got to figure out what is the x and what is the 20. So opposite of this angle is x, so that's an O. And then adjacent to this angle is nothing, so we're not going to label it. And then this is the hypotenuse. All right, so we have O and we have H. So if we look back, we want to identify the correct trig function. Which one would that be? Well, which one only has O and H? Sine, right? So sine is the correct trig function. You can put SIN or you can put SINE. It's up to you. All right, we'll do it one more time. So here's my reference angle. How do I know that's my reference angle? Because that's the one I'm given, 28. So I'm going to circle that one. And then this one is going to be my hypotenuse because it's across from the right angle. And then 15, you got 2 choices. Is it opposite on the opposite side of the triangle, or is it right next to 28? It's right next to it. It's adjacent. So it's going to be A and H. And if we look back here, which one is A over H? Cosine. So cosine would be the answer. Okay, so that's how you do those. All right. Have a good day.